Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the NiceHCK NX7 mk4, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank NiceHCK for providing the NX7 mk4 for a review. Do greatly appreciate it. NiceHCK, you rock. Alright, so the NiceHCK NX7 mk4, these will set you back $110 from your bank account. It is a 7-driver tribrid, and it has a 10mm beryllium-plated dual dynamic driver, a 7-layer piezoelectric driver, and 4 balanced armatures. 32 ohms of impedance, and then the sensitivity is dependent on which of the swappable filters you're using. If you are using the gold filter, it is 112 dB. If you're using the red filter, it is 113 dB, and the black filter is 110 dB. Frequency response range of 20 Hz to 28 kHz. The NiceHCK NX7 mk4 comes in this white box. You get some branding, a little bit of information. On the inside, it's nothing special, so we're not even going to bother to show you the inside. You do get a nice blue carrying case that says NiceHCK on it. Hard shell. Opens up, you have a small bed for the IEM to sit and a little pocket for accessories. I do find it be a little bit on the small side, and it doesn't always stay closed. Wish that I had a little bit like a magnetic close or something that would hold it a little bit tighter, as it does tend to flop open. But it does have some nice protective tendencies for your NX7 mk4. As long as it fits in your bag. Probably won't fit in too many pockets. And then you are provided 2 different bags of tips. You get these really narrow bore black charcoal tip, and you get a bunch of these color coded slightly wider bore tip. Neither of those tips worked for me. I tried all the different sizes, and they just did not fit in my ears, did not feel comfortable. They slept, the NX7 mk4 kept sliding out of my ears. I did not get a good seal or fit. And so I ended up using some alternate tips, which were the Spinfit W1s. I found that those held the NX7 mk4 better in my ears and more snugly, and I got a better seal. And then you get your swappable filters, black and red, and you also have gold, which is pre-installed. The NX7 mk4 looks like this. You have a nice little faceplate with some coloring on it. You got a little bit of gold around the edge, and then a smoky resin back, which you can kind of see some of the inner workings. As you can see, it's a very smooth back. There is no ergonomics to it. A quite aggressive angle, and then a very, very short nozzle. I find that the NX7 mk4 is a nice looking IEM. Nice and small, fairly lightweight. And sadly, that smooth, small backside can cause issues for fit. So you slap them in the ears. Now with these W1 tips, they do stay better in my ear. And I find that they fit okay. The problem is they were just sliding out the entire time, and then that aggressive angle just didn't quite fit my ear hole correctly, and so they're not the most comfortable. I found that I'm able to wear them for about an hour before they become uncomfortable, and that didn't matter what tip I was using because of that angle and the short nozzle. And then isolation of outside noises is not very good. Even with the better sealing W1 tip, it's still probably roughly about 50% of outside noises being blocked. These things are not good at all. I can easily carry on conversation with somebody as long as the music is paused. louder things like coffee grinders, louder TVs, cars going by, dogs barking, that sort of stuff, easily heard. And even with music playing at my normal listening levels, I could still hear them a little bit. So not a very good isolation of outside noises from the NX7 Mark IV. The cable is, yeah, they need stronger ear hooks. A little bit thicker would be preferable. I am not a big fan of the QDC designed connector for 2-pin, and it has a nice split. Cinch stays in place, and then you can get two different types of terminations. You can get 3.5 or 4.4. We have 3.5 in for review. Overall, I find that the cable it's okay, lightweight and thin, nice braid going to the termination. Overall, I just wish it had better ear hooks and a different connection instead of the QDC connection, and it would be an okay cable. The NiceHCK NX7 Mark IV is really surprisingly easy to drive, even though it is 39 ohms and anywhere from 110 to 113 dB. I found that it can be powered to loud volumes through any dongle, DAP, or desktop that I had. No issues getting it to volume. I did find that on some higher output impedances, especially desktop gear, that it did emanate some hiss and a little bit of distortion, so do beware of that. I found also that the NX7 Mark IV is rather picky when it came to the source set presentation. So if it's a warmer, kind of robust type of sound in the bass, the black filter probably won't work very well for you. It's going to sound somewhat bloated and a little bit too thick and sluggish. And I found that a more cold analytical leaning will not sound good on the red filter. It's going to be a little bit hot and aggressive sounding. A source that's a little bit more on the neutral side is going to sound best with all three. And the gold filter was not as picky as the red and the black. It just kind of was something that never really impressed no matter what filter was being used when it was on a neutral source. The differences were more noticeable on a warmer or more cold analytical type of sources. Filters. Yeah, they make a difference. So using the various filters, you had the black, the red, and the gold, which is pre-installed. The black filter made a significant difference when it came to bass quantity. You definitely got a more wallop in the sound, but it also was bloated, a little bit thicker, and more sluggish sounding, and not as refined and defined in the bass. And then the upper mids and lower treble, or actually just treble overall, were very much veiled. They did not have a lot of sparkle, a lot of energy or air in the overall. The whole presentation just sounded like it was kind of gasping for air, and it just was not a very pleasurable presentation for me, as it was a very fatiguing bass and just didn't have a lot of energy throughout. Adding in the treble filter, you definitely get the energy, but it becomes a very thin sound, and especially in the bass, it loses that body and that fullness, and it becomes very shouty, very sibilant, very hot, and it maximizes fatigue. So if you are sensitive to upper presence, I would shy away from using the red filter for sure. And then going with the gold filter, that was my preference. And that'll be the filter that I use to describe the sound of the NX7 Mark IV. Now, do keep in mind that the sound will also be using the Spinfit W1 as the tip. So, how do the NX7 Mark IV sound? So the NX7 Mark IV bass is somewhat punchy, especially in the mid bass, and then it has an adequate sub bass presence. You'll get a little bit of rumble and grumble, not a whole lot, but you'll get a little there, especially when called upon. But the mid bass is the focus. Now the upper bass has a little bit of presence as well, does bleed into the lower mids slightly, adding in some warmth and a little bit of body. The bass is pretty good on tonality, and also it has decent texture, and it has a nice adequate authority. It's not an overpowering bass unless you put in the black filter, but there's enough presence there, and you get enough texture and enough punch and slam to keep the toes tapping and keep it engaging. It's pretty much a fun sounding bass. It's not really a more analytical sound. It's more about the quantity than the quality, even with the gold filter. Now, if you put the red filter on, it becomes very thin and very lightweight, and you get a lot of the details, and you don't have much impact and slam. Going into the mids are uneven, and the lower mids have more of a fullness and a little bit more of a lushness, especially with the black filter or the gold filter. Putting in the red filter, it does get a little bit thinner in the lower mids, but the lower mids have nice presence to them, and they have a nice amount of just fullness, nice note weight, and a good tone and timbre. Going into the upper mids, starting around 1.5K and going all the way out to about 6K, they're very much elevated, and they become thin and shouty sounding, and the tonality, instead of being more natural sounding like it is in the lower mids, becomes unnatural, and there's a lot of metallic timbre, and it just doesn't sound natural and accurate, especially affecting strings, brass, and woodwind instruments that do not sound natural at all. So the mids and the lower mids have a nice body, nice presence, and then as you go more forward, it just becomes more uneven and is not cohesive with the rest of the mids. The treble is what I would call extra crispy. It has a lot of a zip to it, a lot of zing, and there's a lot of edge, overly edgy, and it has a bitey tendency to it, and not in a natural way. It's a very aggressive bite, and it has, like the mids and the uppers, it's very thin and just sounds unnatural, especially with stringed instruments. Overall, I find that the treble has nice air and presence about it, but at the same time is overly cooked. It's too well done, and it just in a bad way, and it becomes a very aggressive sounding treble. If you're sensitive to the upper presence, I would be very leery of using the NX7 mk4, especially using the red filter really brings that out. Now, if you want to tame that down, you can use the black filter, but then it becomes veiled and muffled and doesn't sound natural either, and it sounds very stuffy. So there's not really a balance. Even using the gold filter doesn't really bring enough back and bring it to natural. It just always sounds unnatural no matter what one of the three filters that you're using. So the bass, the mids, and the treble of the NX7 mk4 are not balanced. They're not cohesive. The bass sounds more natural. It has a little bit more of a lean towards the fun side, but does have enough details and resolution. Lower mids have nice presence and a nice body to things and sound a little bit more on the natural side. And then as you go up into registries, as you get higher into the octaves, and as you get into the higher regions of the presentation on the NX7 mk4, it becomes more and more unnatural. It becomes thinner, and it just does not sound accurate and true. Soundstage of the NX7 mk4 is what I would call small. It's not intimate, but it's close to it. It's a very small stage, does not have a lot of width to it, and it has a very strong center focus. It is very much about the center focus. You get some right and left, and it's not three blobbed. Things do glide across evenly and accurately, but the center is more focused than the right and the left. And as things go across, they kind of just appear and then go out and then exit out. They're, whoop, we're here, they're out. And it's very strong center focus. The depth of the NX7 is not really that good. You can read a couple of rows into the stage. Layering is kind of average at best. On busier, more complex tracks, the NX7 Mark IV will get kind of bogged down and confused, and will kind of meld things together. And the more complex, more instruments and more things going on the stage, it'll get a little bit confused and won't separate and layer out as accurately. Imaging, as said, is pretty good. It follows things across the stage. You can track things and place them, but they just kind of appear and disappear. They don't really transition in and out accurately. It's not the most precise and accurate in placement. It's kind of in this neighborhood. It's over in here. It's over here. The details and resolution of the NX7 are average at best. It's $110 IEM, and it's going to stay within its competition. It's not really going to do anything worse or better. It's pretty much what you get, and what is to be expected for $110 IEM. And it's not going to make you go, man, I wish there was more, or I wish there was, I missed that, or I didn't hear that, or wow, I heard that. It's more like, oh, okay, that's just how it always sounds. Resolution, on the other hand, isn't that great, especially in the upper, mids, and treble regions. It is glassy and glary sounding and not very natural and accurate reproduction. Tone and timbre. The tone and timbre is pretty decent in the bass and lower mids regions. Sounds fairly natural and accurate. Going into the upper mids and into the treble, it becomes unnatural and has some metallic timbre to it, especially affecting strings, woodwinds, and brass instruments. How does the NiceHCK NX7 Mark IV compare to a couple other IEMs? An IEM that's slightly cheaper is the Truthear Hexa, and I find that the Truthear Hexa is more neutral sounding, has a more accurate tone and timbre, and also is better detailed and resolving, and has a more accurate stage with better depth and layering capabilities, and is more accurate in its imaging and placement. And I find that the Truthear Hexa is just a little bit more pleasurable to listen to, even though it is a little bit on the more neutral side of things. And then you have the Kiwi Ears Quintet, and I find that the Kiwi Ears Quintet has a similar presentation, but it's just better defined, refined, and focused, and has an overall more accurate tone and timbre, and a little bit better details and resolution, and a better soundstage. Even though it's not the widest of sound stages on the Quintet, it is a more accurate soundstage, especially with its imaging and how things come in and out, and it's better layered and better depth. Overall, I find that the Kiwi Ears Quintet, even though it is about $100 more in price, is a significant step up if you want a similar presentation. And then the Truthear Hexa is a better option for a little bit less if you want a little bit more neutral of a presentation. And NX7 Mark IV from NiceHCK. I really wanted to enjoy this IEM, but I find that the build with the shallow, smooth back and short nozzle, and then the aggressive angle just didn't really quite fit in my ears. And then the sound signature, no matter what one of the filters were being used, just I couldn't find one that was pleasurable for my music preference. And it might be different for you, but for me, it just wasn't a pleasurable listen, and I could only manage to listen to them for a little bit at a time before my ears just said enough. You know, it's either too fatiguing with way too much bass, too fatiguing with way too much treble, or it was just the off-putting tone and timbre that was just unnatural sounding. I wish I could recommend the NiceHCK NX7 mk4, but it just has too many flaws to overcome what it does good. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Let's try that again. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those out. And then don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information on there regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through YouTube memberships and Patreon. Thank you very much for all that you give to the channel. It is much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's various ways that you can do that through PayPal, Venmo, and YouTube with one-time gifts, or monthly subscriptions, Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you can get access to my videos early and also access to my private Discord server. If you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. And then also down below, there's all kinds of other information regarding music recommendations, gear recommendations, and all kinds of other things. So check out the links down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.